Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. Great to have you in the conversation. The 888-589-8840 is the number to call. 888-589-8840. I got a column here by Charles Kratheimer going back to the issue of science. And remember, I made the point in the opening monologue that it's not possible for there to be a conflict between good theology and good science. You can have a conflict between bad theology and good science, or between good theology and bad science, bad theology and good science, but it's not possible to have a conflict between good theology and good science because God is the originator, God is the author of both. Now, one of the things that comes up in connection with all this is this whole business of scientific consensus or of settled science. Remember, that's what we're always told with about global warming. Well, there's a consensus. 97 is a totally mythical figure, but 97% of all climatologists or whatever agree on man-caused global warming. And Charles Kratheimer's got a column today in the Washington Post, The Myth of Settled Science. And he begins this piece, he's talking here about global warming and exposing that for the fraud that it is. But he begins by talking about a massive study, a randomized study regarding mammograms. And this study that followed 90,000 women for 25 years examined the question of whether women ought to have mammograms. And you know that the settled science is, you got to do it. It's preventive. You got to do it. It's important. Every woman ought to have mammograms as a preventive against breast cancer. Well, this randomized study, 90,000 women, 25 years, concluded that mammograms likely have no effect on breast cancer deaths. In fact, 1 out of 5 of those diagnosed by mammogram receives unnecessary radiation, chemo, or surgery. So they get radical treatment that they don't even need because of the false positive. And so his point is so much for settledness. Here's something that for 25 years has been settled science, got to get the mammogram. Now we discover it doesn't have any impact on preventing breast cancer, and it may lead you to get a very invasive and, that radically impacts your quality of life for at least some period of time that you don't even need. And so he brings that into the issue of anthropogenic global warming. Again, man-caused global warming is just kind of considered settled science. Everybody thinks that all the scientists believe that. We know, as a matter of fact, that is simply not true. And I want to share with you, that there's this petition at the Oregon Science Center that has 32,000 scientists that have signed this thing saying they do not believe in anthropogenic man-caused global warming. 32,000 scientists, 10,000 of them are PhDs. They don't believe that man is the cause of global warming. And you've got maybe 400 or 500 scientists that contribute to these UN reports. So here are 10,000 PhDs saying, no, what you're hearing from these 500 scientists, we simply do not agree with from a scientific standpoint. Speaking of global warming, before I get into this piece, this is not funny, but it just shows you how ludicrous and ridiculous things get when you believe in global warming and you try to manufacture some solution for it that's completely unnecessary. Solar panels, now is the big deal. Got to use solar panels, got to go green, alternative energy. And we've seen that they're a threat to the desert tortoise. We've seen that they're frying birds in the middle of the air. So they're bird fryers. They're destroying the habitat for the desert tortoise. So environmentalists are all up in arms. The wind turbines are nothing but bird blenders. And now we find out that solar panels on rooftops are a positive hazard to firefighters. They're a positive hazard to firefighters because of the unintended consequences that come from solar panels. Now, one deal with solar panels, realize that they draw their energy from the sun. There's no way to turn them off. You can't throw a switch and turn off the electricity that's being generated by a solar panel because it does it automatically. Now, it feeds it into the house, but just because you cut off the transmission line doesn't mean it's not. So when they go up on this roof, they find that the solar panels are still generating and emitting electricity. And if they start spraying water on these things, well, you know what can happen. The electric pulse travels up the stream of water, and they can be injured or killed by the electric current from these solar panels on rooftops. Firefighters cannot, this is a piece on Breitbart.com, firefighters cannot quickly or easily get to a roof to cut the lines to solar panels or to otherwise fight a fire. They employ what is called defensive firefighting. With this tactic, fire crews focus on keeping surrounding buildings from catching fire instead of attempting to put out the original fire. And those would say, look, it's too risky for us to try to put out the fire in your house or your business because of all of these solar panels. We try to do that, we're going to fry. We can't do that. So the best we can do, because we don't want to lay down our lives for the top of your roof, we're going to keep the houses around you from burning up. So I'll let your house turn into nothing but ash and cinders because it's simply too dangerous to try to fight the original fire. It also creates problems for firemen to cut ventilation holes through roofs in emergency situations. There's an industrial complex, one example near Philadelphia. It burned for 29 hours because firefighters could not get to the roof because it was covered by all of these energized solar panels, which, by the way, are very heavy, and so it increases the risk of a roof collapse. And the materials that go into these solar panels become toxic in a fire. So they got to wear their gas masks on top of a roof. These firefighters do because of the harmful chemicals that are released into the air. Now, let's grab a couple of phone calls. I want to talk about Roy Spencer's column. I'll save that for the second hour. But he says, look, these people are calling me a denier, which is a term that's used for people that deny the Holocaust. So I'm going to start calling them Nazis. I'm going to start calling them global warming Nazis. And he lists all of the ways in which these anthropogenic global warming alarmists share characteristics in common with the Nazis. They believe in the supreme authority of the state. The state, in turn, supports their scientific research, which supports the cause of the state. That's fascism. That's what the Nazis did. If you have a dissenting scientific view, you're jackbooted. And now in our culture, scientific journals will try to shut you down. That's just what the Nazis did to any dissenting voices. They're anti-capitalist, just like the Nazis. They're willing to sacrifice millions of lives of poor people at the altar of environmentalism. We've talked about this before. Expensive energy policies increase poverty, and they endanger lives. People die because they don't have access to inexpensive energy. And environmentalists simply don't care about that. They're happy to see these millions of innocent human beings suffer on the altar of radical environmentalism. So there's authoritarianism associated with the global warming movement. It leads to an overeducated elite class. Nazi Germany had more PhDs per capita than any country. And Roy Spencer, he's got a PhD. He says, look, I'm not against education, but it also seems to me like some of the stupidest people on the planet Earth are also the most educated. So they're intelligent, they're educated, but they are ignorant. So Roy Spencer says, as long as they continue to call people like me deniers, I will call them global warming Nazis. So that may become the new term of art here on Focal Point. All right, let's go to the phones. Let's grab a call from Don in Milan, Illinois. Don, welcome. What's on your mind?
We'll start with you was talking about the global warming. I hate that. When it comes to solar panels, pass me my baseball bat, please. Because it's a farce, it's a hoax, and all it comes down to is the reason people fight it so hard is because there's money involved.
Mm-hmm.
And, they can't cut off their money, so they can't...
Well, and it has to be taxpayer money because those alternate sources of energies cannot survive on their own. They're too expensive. So the only way you have to prop them up with taxpayer money. So that's part of why they do it. They can get money from you and me that's been lifted out of our wallets.
Right. But the reason I'm calling is I've been worrying about this. I've been listening. I found out through Glenn Beck, and you talked about it a couple of days ago, Justine Pelletier.
Yes.
Over there in Massachusetts, and how she's being tortured and everything.
Yes.
How's she doing? Is she getting any progress getting out of that, or what?
Well, nothing has changed. What he's talking about, what Don is talking about, is that 13-year-old or 15-year-old girl by now who's basically in the custody of Boston Children's Hospital, and they won't let her out. Her parents want to take her back to Tufts, where she was getting the kind of treatment that was actually helping her. Now she's confined to a wheelchair. She has no lower body strength, very little strength in her upper body. And she's basically been kidnapped from her parents. And her parents accused her of over-medicating Justina when all they were doing was following the prescription regime that was prescribed for them by the doctors at Tufts Medical Center, one of the preeminent medical centers in the country. And she was thriving under that kind of care.
Right.
She goes to Boston Children's Hospital, and now she's withering away. Her dad's concerned that she's going to die in the custody of the Boston Children's Hospital, and she's still trapped there. Last word, Don, she's still stuck in Boston Children's Hospital, and they won't let her go.
Because last I heard when Lou, her father, was on Glenn Beck, was when he was going back to, I think it's Connecticut, where he actually lived at. Before he even got off the train, they slapped him with a contempt of court charge because he went up on Glenn Beck and talked about it.
Yeah, well, that was the thing that to me was, I mean, it's not by a long stretch the most offensive part of this, but the judge slapped a gag order on everybody. This is what Don's talking about. The judge slapped a gag order on anybody. Says if you talk to anybody about this case, you'll be in contempt of court, and that could either be civil or criminal. In other words, the father, if he gets charged with criminal contempt, he goes to jail. So he'll join his daughter in the custody of the state. And the father says, look, I love my daughter. I've got a 25-year-old daughter with the same disease. She's doing well under the same kind of treatment we were getting at Tufts. And I cannot remain silent any longer because my daughter will die if something is not done. And because he's out there advocating, blowing the whistle on this, bringing it to light, trying to save the life of his daughter, a judge wants to throw him in jail. That's American justice for you. All right, Don, appreciate the call. Thank you. We'll be right back. Take some calls coming right out of the chute after the news. Don't go anywhere. Focal Point AFR Talk.